To start this project, I laminated 4 1-inch pieces of poplar that were about 40 inches long each. The pieces were about 3 3/4 of an inch wide. After the glue dried, I ran them through the joiner and the planer, and we're now at about a 3 1/2 inch square block, and I trimmed it down to 37 3/4, which is about the maximum length that my lathe can handle. I'm going to start off by truing my blank, but I'm not going to take it to complete true. I'm going to stop just shy so that the edges are round, but I've got flat spots on all 4 sides. Taking it down about all the farther I want to go for now. I'm going to go ahead and move the tool rest up the spindle and try to get it as close as I can to the rough diameter I've turned on this end, and I'll come back once I get the entire spindle turned this way. We'll talk about what we're going to do next and demonstrate that. I do want to point out I am using the RJBWoodTurner tool. This is the square end tool. I've had it for a while, and I think I bought it back in maybe April, and I'm just now really starting to use it. I like the tool. I just have not gotten used to it yet because I'm used to using my high-speed steel tools. But we're gonna use it for roughing this entire project out, and then we'll move on to whatever other tool we need to finish off. I've got my blank trued up, and this will be the base or the bottom of the snowman. The blank is going to be a total of 36 inches in length. This is the halfway point at 18 inches. And then we're going to go on up a little more. So from this point, we're going to go up 12 inches. And this will be the center section of the snowman, or the body, the top part of the body. And the head will be up here. And 36 inches is somewhere around in this area. So we'll round the head off and we'll flatten it. And I'm hoping to put a tenon at the top of the head so that I can turn a hat and slide it onto that tenon to hold it onto the snowman. Now, the reason why I rounded the corners but I left the flat areas on this blank is because there's going to be, instead of arms, the snowman will have hooks to hang stockings on. Around his neck will probably be a little scarf, and then there'll be some hooks below the scarf, 3 of them, to hang our triplets stockings. This particular part of the snowman, I've kind of just penciled in this area. What I want to do is kind of cut in a little bit here and cut up this way so that it kind of looks like a snowball piled on top of a snowball. I don't want to go too deep because it might look awkward, but I'm going to come in with a parting tool and just cut a nice little groove right here, and then I'll just sort of taper the left and right side a little bit. I'll do that up top between the head and the shoulder area. And then I probably will kind of taper the bottom just a little bit where it sits on the base. Now that I've separated the top and the bottom half with the parting tool, I'm going to come in with just a spindle gouge and see if I can't put a little bit of a definition in there to kind of give it that snowball on a snowball look. I've got the 2 lower sections sanded up. This project will be receiving white paint, and I've sanded it to 100 grit, which is probably plenty for a couple of coats of paint. Now what I want to do is focus on the head. I'm probably going to come up to maybe about here, round the head off just a little bit, and then I'll flatten it and put a tenon up top so that I can make a hat, and the hat will then set on that tenon. Before I turned the head of the snowman, I thought it was a good idea to call my wife out to the garage and ask her what she thought. This was the line I was going to use to build the head of the snowman. She wants me to move to this line. Reason why, she's bought some large buttons for eyes, and she's bought some buttons or something for a mouth, and she needs more room to be able to get them on the snowman. Plus, she wants me to turn a little carrot-style nose. So I'm going to call this the top of the snowman's head. I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and then I'm going to turn tenon here. It's going to be a rather large tenon, maybe somewhere between 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. You know what? Probably about the same diameter as the center that I've got in the lathe. That way I can just turn it right down, and when I get done sanding, I can just remove this from the lathe and we're ready to go to paint. The turning and sanding of the snowman are complete. Now, I initially wanted to make the tenon at the top of the snowman's head a little thinner. However, this piece is so long that the thinner I got, the more flex and the more wobble I got. So I decided not to push my luck. I can work with the tenon that I have. All that's left to do is to remove this from the lathe. I'll take a Japanese flush cut saw and I'll cut that little disc off at the top to get rid of that. And this is ready for paint. Next, we're going to move on to making a hat for our snowman. The only piece of wood I had in the shop large enough to turn a hat out of, without laminating something up, of course, and I am running out of time to do that, is this piece of pear. I am hoping to turn a tenon down at this end and get this in a chuck to make it a little safer to turn, and then we'll turn the brim of our hat here, and we'll cut the top part of our hat in right here. I have this chunk of pear mounted on my chuck, and I brought the tailstock up to provide a little extra stability. All I'm going to do now is true this blank up. I'm not going to film that. I'll come back when it's trued, and then we'll know what the maximum dimension for the bill of our hat is, and we'll go from there. I've got the piece of pear trued up, and I'm ready to start turning the hat. I've made a couple of marks. This will be the rim of the hat, and this will be the top of the hat, and I'll give it a little bit of a concave appearance. chucked up a poplar pin blank, and I'm going to attempt to turn a little nose for the snowman. This will be painted orange to somewhat resemble a carrot. So I'm just going to kind of true it up and then sort of angle it down and make it maybe about 2 inches long, 2.5 inches long. And we can always trim the back down to glue it into the snowman, you know, to adjust it to the right length. So we'll start by truing it up. I think what I'm going to do now is go ahead and mark a couple of segments on here where I can sort of do almost like beads and just give it some definition to make it look more like a carrot. I am not going to sharpen up the end of it because I don't want it to be dangerous. Eventually I'll round that over with the skew, and then I'll sand it, you know, to make it round with my sandpaper, because I just don't want that to be dangerous if someone walks into it and pokes it, a little kid pokes an eye out or something. So let me get my pencil, I'll mark a few spots on here, and then we'll try to make a few beads. I'm going back probably way farther than I should, and that's a bad line there. Let me make that a little further back. Let's do this line here, and let's do this line about here. I know I'm making more marks than I need, but I probably will only use about this much of it, just kind of guessing. However, I want to give it enough length to where, you know, I have the option to cut a piece off and shorten it. I'd rather not, you know, I'd rather not have it made too small and have to do it over. So let's see if I can make some beads. This will be interesting. I'm relatively happy with that. Just needs a little sanding up, and that may be about the right length now that I look at it. I think what I'm going to do is pull the tailstock away and very carefully attempt to round the tip of this over, and then we'll do a little sanding. I really like that. I'm going to go ahead and I'll shut the camera off, sand this up off camera, and then I'll just get it parted off, and I'm really happy with that. It looks pretty good. I'm surprised. Turned out better than I thought. I didn't have any large 3/4 inch thick boards in the shop, so I made a temporary base until I can get something. This is just some tiger ply, and I cut a couple of rectangles. I've glued it up, and I've got a couple pieces of holly sitting on it just to hold it down until it tacks. There's a screw run through the middle as well. This base will be temporary, so I'm not going to route the edges or anything, because with the plywood I'm concerned that I may have a lot of tear out. Once I get some additional wood, I'll come back and build another base. This base will just be attached to the snowman with 2 screws. I went ahead and took the snowman and mounted him to a large piece of scrap so that he'll be easy to paint. I did the same thing with the nose as well as the snowman's hat. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to take some primer and get a good solid coat on everything. I figure by the time I get the snowman, the hat, and his nose primed, that the glue should have tacked up enough with the screw in it to hold it in place that I should be able to go ahead and put some primer on the base as well. I've got a good coat of primer on everything. I'm just going to let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow we'll apply the paint. My primer has had overnight to dry, and everything looks pretty good. I think it turned out really nice. I've got a nice even coat over the surface. The poplar coated really well. It always takes paint so well. I'm going to go ahead now, and I've got some gloss white paint. I'm going to paint the snowman's body in gloss white. Then we're going to come back and paint the top hat and the base in black, and the nose, of course, will be orange. I've got everything painted and just going to let it sit out here and dry for a while. And once it's good and dry, we'll come back and attempt to get it all assembled. My first coat of paint has dried, and I was able to see some blemishes in the wood that I needed to fix, as well as I had a couple of small runs. My paint was cold, so it was relatively thick, and there were a few areas where it ran, so I sanded down the runs, and I went ahead and patched this area, and then there's a very small area on the back. I'm waiting for that to dry so I can sand it smooth. I'll apply a second coat. The paint has been in the house for 2 days, so it should be a decent consistency once I stir it up, and I shouldn't have the run issues that I had initially. What I'm facing right now is I need a way to attach the hat and the nose. And I don't want to just glue them on, so what I thought I would do is, let me show you this. I've got a bolt here. I thought I would just take and drill a hole the size of the top of this bolt and epoxy it into the bottom of the hat. I know exactly where the center is because it was turned on the lathe, and there's already a hole there, and I've run a screw up through it. By attaching this or screwing it into the hat, I'll be able to find the center of this pole. Obviously it was on the lathe as well. I'll just drill a tiny pilot hole, and I can twist the hat right on to the top of this post. That way, at the end of the season, if I want to pack this away and I'm worried about the hat getting damaged, I can remove the hat, wrap it up in some paper, and put it in a box. It should be safe. I also have one of these little screws. It's threaded for a machine screw on this side and a wood screw on this side. I'm going to drill a hole in the center of the nose, and I'm going to epoxy this in, and I'll also drill a nice little hole in the front of the face where the nose goes, and I can just thread the nose right onto the face. Once again, at the end of the season, if I'm concerned about it getting broken while it's packed away, I can remove it and pack it with the hat. I've got the main body of the snowman repainted. Now what I want to do is take a little bit of lacquer and just put a top coat on the base, hat, and nose to kind of protect them. I've got a second coat of paint on the snowman's body. I think it looks pretty darn good. And I've also shot a coat of lacquer on the hat, the base, and the snowman's nose, just to kind of shine them up and protect them. This paint that I had used was kind of flat. It was a flat acrylic. I've removed all of my snowman pieces from the wooden blocks that I was using to hold them up while I painted them. And what I want to do now is I want to take the body of the snowman and get it attached to the base. And then I want to take the hat and get it mounted to the top of the snowman's head. At that point, I'm going to stop. I still have hooks to attach, 3 of them, and I still have a nose to attach. But what I want to do is take this into my wife, and I'm going to let her go ahead and position the eyes and the mouth and the buttons down the front, the scarf, all the things she needs to do. When she does, then that will allow me to decide, where to drill the pilot hole to be able to thread the snowman's nose on at, as well as we'll discuss where she wants the hooks, and I'll go ahead and get those mounted. I'll come back and show you guys what the snowman looks like and at the very end. When I attached these 2 pieces of plywood together, I found the center, and I used a screw to lock them down while the glue dried. So I already know where the center hole is. And I also used a nice large piece of MDF, and I ran a screw right up through the center of my snowman. So I've already got my center points on both marked. So I grabbed a 3-inch screw, and I'm just going to basically attach the base to the center of the snowman with that 3-inch screw. And then I'll move over a little bit. I'm going to drill a second hole and use a second 3-inch screw just to kind of lock the snowman down on the base. And before I final tighten it, I just want to make sure that my snowman is facing forward, and I chose this particular side because it was the best looking of all the sides. Whoops, I was afraid that would happen. All right, nice and tight. Let me stand her up and make sure the snowman is facing forward. Twist it just a little bit. There we go. I'm happy with the way my snowman is facing on the stand. I'm going to go ahead and just put a second hole in there and a second screw to lock everything down. And I'm just going to move over just about maybe 3/4 of an inch. Make a locking hole. Another 3-inch screw. And that should ensure that our snowman does not move around on the base. Make sure we didn't damage anything, and we didn't. I like how that looks. Let's go ahead now and mount the hat. Now what I'm going to have to do, you might remember I put a tenon on the top of the snowman. I ended up cutting that off because it just didn't work out with the hat that I made. So I don't have a center mark. So I'm just going to basically use a lathe centering tool, find my center, I'll punch it, drill it, and then we'll be able to thread the hat on. I actually epoxied a nice large bolt in the center of the hat. This is a centering jig that I use. It's from Nova. I'm not being sponsored by them. It's just one that I found and I use. It's kind of nice. It's got a little lip on the bottom, and you lay the circle, or in this case circle, it could be any shape, into this little groove. And on the top, you draw a line, and you rotate it 4 or 5 times, and you'll find the center. Let me show you. Just going to lay it on here and make sure that, there we go, it fits in the groove. And we'll rotate it. It works exceptionally well on circles. And you can see there, I know exactly where the center is. So I'm just going to punch that, drill a quick little hole, and we'll be able to put the cap on. I want to show the punch. I often get asked about this. This was a Harbor Freight buy, under $5, maybe $3.99 or something. It's just a little punch. It comes in really handy for woodworking. I find the center, give it a pop, and now I'm ready to drill a hole to receive the hat. I've grabbed a 7/32 inch bit. This is 2 sizes smaller, according to my drill gauge, than the thread pattern on my bolt. So this will let me torque the bolt down a little bit. It won't be super tight where I'm going to twist the bolt out of the hat, but it'll be tight enough to hold the hat snugly on the snowman. And I'm just going to line my drill up on the hole I punched. Make sure I'm holding it as level as possible. Okay. I'm going to tump it up to get any additional sawdust out of there. And I'm ready to thread the hat onto the snowman. Okay, it's starting to bite. And perfect. It's snug, but it's not so tight. There we go. All right, I'm really, really happy with that. Let me set it up here. This may not be the perfect view with the light in the background and everything, but you can see it's about 3.5 feet tall. Well, I'll tell you how tall it is. It is 42 inches, so 3.5 feet tall. Next up, my wife has a little scarf to go around the neck. We've got some items to put on the face, some buttons down the front, and some hooks. I'm going to take this in, let her look it over really close, decide how she wants to position everything, and I'll come back and show you this Snowman Stocking Hanger completed. Here is the finished Snowman Stocking Holder. I went ahead and put a face on it with some buttons. We've got the carrot nose mounted. We added a scarf, some little peppermint style buttons, and I put 3 hooks, one for each of the triplets. I'd like to thank you for joining me for this project. It really was a quick project. In reality, it took me about 3 days to do the whole thing, but there was a lot of other activities going on around the holidays, so I would do a little here and I would take a break and go do something, and I would come back and do a little more and take a break. I would say the whole project, minus the glue up, probably took about 4.5, 5 hours total. So it was really a quick project. My wife absolutely loves it. The kids are crazy about it. And I think it's going to be just kind of a fun little addition, since we don't have a fireplace with a mantle, a fun little addition to our Christmas tradition of hanging the stocking and then the stocking being full on Christmas morning. So I'd really like to thank you for joining me in the shop today. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and Merry Christmas, everybody.